You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA. You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA.
Hello and welcome to episode 364 of the fabulous Peltoncast, sponsored by our friends at Pagliacci Pizza. I'm your co-host, Kevin Pelton.
And I'm Tristan Carcino.
And we are coming to you from Renton, Washington, home of the Super Bowl 48 champion Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, who's 64?
We're
in the offensive lineman territory.
Thoroughly in the offensive lineman zone right
Defensive
now.
lineman, possibly?
There could be some defensive linemen. That's true. You're going to have to fill while I look this up here.
I'm going to say that it's for the Nintendo 64 and shouts to my takes later.
There you go. That connects to your takes?
Mildly.
64, we have UW, I believe, center Kyle Ben.
There we go.
I don't know why I determined he was notable enough to make it.
Shouts to Kyle Ben. Shouts down to Jamie Ben.
Wow.
Remember when we used to do shouts up and shouts down? That was a long time ago.
What about anti-shout-out? Was that the JaVale McGee thing?
Anti-shout-out?
I think that was a thing. I think I once had an anti-shout-out to a train.
Lakers fans? No.
Well...
That's me. I'm Lakers fans. That's why I can make that joke.
Exactly. A 3-year starter in the offensive line between 1999 and 2001. Kyle Ben brought toughness, a nasty edge, and leadership.
I swear Kyle Ben was on the team this year. I swear to God, Kyle Ben has been on the Husky offensive line for the last 20 years. You could have convinced me of it if you would have told me any era, 1990 through. You could have been like, he was the Husky starting center last year, and I would have been like, Kyle Ben was a rock on the offensive line. And if he's not back, I'll be devastated.
You would have just gone with it.
No, I literally, like, if you would have asked me what era, I would have been like, currently? Did he graduate? And you also could have been like...
You played in 1991.
The 91 championship team anchored by center Kyle Ben. I would have been like, the team on the defensive and offensive side of the ball was about toughness.
Apparently
and you have
guard,
to look at a
not
player.
Center, for the record.
Okay. You have to look at a player like Kyle Ben. See, I didn't even know what position he played. Who anchored that offensive
I think
line
I said center.
and led them to a national championship.
Mm-hmm. He served as interim offensive line coach during spring 2013, apparently. So that's a thing that happened.
This is the most Kyle Ben has been talked about on the podcast.
It's a lot of signed as an undrafted free agent with the Tennessee Titans following the 2002
Well, they had a lot
NFL
of Husky
draft.
offensive linemen around that era.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. All right, should we get into our search for Seattle's best IPA?
Nah, more Kyle Ben talk, I think.
I mean, there is this Husky legend story here from 2018.
About how Don James recruited Kyle Ben and said, you'll be the Husky offensive lineman for the next 4 decades.
O'Day High School product.
Wow, okay, there
Shouts
we
to
go.
the Sallies.
He's like Drew Timmy, Kyle Ben. He'll never leave. He always was and he always will be. Kyle Ben is eternal. Okay, now we can talk. Oh,
Do you want to know which coach he actually committed to?
Tyrone Willingham?
No, 2001.
Oh, I forgot. I still forgot what year it was.
Jim Lambright.
Jim Lambright?
Jim Lambright.
Look, we're hopping every era of Husky football. That's what Kyle Ben does.
Like when he committed to Jim Owens, he was like...
Wasn't Jim Owens a running back? Was he on the team also?
Jim Owens was the coach.
Only the coach? He never played?
I don't think at UW. No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay, we've gone too far.
All right, well, let's talk about the beers that we are drinking this week.
You remember that Dogfather poster our dad used to have in his bedroom?
It still exists, doesn't it?
3 Kyle Bens on it.
Right.
1 purple rose.
All right, that was a good joke. He played at the University of Oklahoma. Jim Owens, under head coach Bud Wilkinson, is a teammate of future Texas coach Darrell Royal and future UW coach. So
I'm somehow now out on Jim Owens after hearing that.
well, you should be out on Jim Owens, but that's a different conversation for another day. Let's remember some Husky coaches. Again, let's get into this week's search for Seattle's best IPA. We have a pair of beers again, this time from 2 different locations.
Hello.
So first off, from our friends at Pike Brewing, the Space Needle West Coast IPA. Fitting because we learned today
Wow.
that the Space Needle is going back from orange to its traditional white top, I guess.
The Space Needle was orange?
Yeah, it's been orange for a long period of time as part of the 60th anniversary celebrations, but that's in the past now.
Wow. I didn't even notice that. This is like a Kyle Benn situation.
What are you noticing?
You tell me to draw the space needle. That motherfucker's white. Was this Randy's idea? Because I'll tell you what. Full page ad, Randy. Thank you.
The orange or the going back?
Going back. I love it. This is like on Parks and Rec when they were trying to figure out the design for what they wanted for like the cards, and then they found the design from the 70s and they're like, let's just do that again. Randy was like pontificating. What about white? And everybody stood up and applauded him.
I don't know if it's intentional or not. The cans do have orange lettering here.
Wow.
On the
Are we supposed to toast, or is this more critical?
we can still toast.
Okay.
While we're enjoying this.
Can you tell me about this beer? But I also want to hear about Pike Brewing, because they are a mystery to me. Pike Brewing.
I didn't do any research on Pike Brewing in
You're
general.
gonna have to tell me off the top of your head then.
There's not a lot of information about this on the website, but a pine, notes of pine and citrus, and the hops are Cascade, Centennial, Simcoe, and Columbus, which are many of the same hops as were in last week's Georgetown beers, I would say.
I like this better than I thought I would.
It's kind of mild, I would say. It's not as hoppy. Do you agree with that?
I think I agree with that. I think it's flavorful though.
Yes. Oh, it's definitely flavorful.
Honestly, I feel like I was going into this assuming that the Georgetown beers, again, it's a little hard to remember the exact flavor profile of a beer a week later, but I think that this is more competitive with the Georgetown beers than I anticipated it would be.
Pike Brewing Company, an independent craft brewery founded in 1989 by craft beer pioneers Charles and Roseanne Finkel, located in Seattle's iconic Pike Place Public Market neighborhood. Pike Brewing Company is home to two restaurants, the Pike Pub and Pike Fish Bar.
Okay, so that was my question, was to me, we haven't talked about the history of craft beer. That's something we have to get into.
It definitely is, yes.
So we've talked about this a little bit. There's like craft beer 1.0. Right? That's when your parents were drinking Henry Weinhardt's. They were drinking Red Hook or whatever. I was making fun of somebody the other
Henry
day.
Weinhardt's goes way back.
Henry Weinhardt's is like
they're
ancient.
not even 1.0.
Maybe that's like they're like prehistoric.
In this context, yes. I don't want to say that in a derogatory term to our friends at Henry's.
But then there was like Red Hook, right? Like that era, Red Hook, Pyramid, breweries like that. That I think there was a law that established that allowed there to be craft brewing.
Correct.
And this happened like
around 1980 would be maybe a little bit later.
Something
than that.
like that. Anyway, I was making fun of somebody the other day, and I was joking that they were cracking open a couple of Red Hook ESBs or whatever. No offense to the beer, but it's sort of just like it's like your grandfather's craft beer, right?
I mean, I don't know if I would go that far.
And Pike Brewing, I'll tell you, grandfathers are getting a lot older than they used to.
I'm-
We're
I
a
mean,
lot
I'm-
closer in age to them than we used to be.
I'm aware of that, but the term is your grandfather's, not a grandfather's.
That's what I said.
Huh?
Isn't it?
But your grandfather is much considerably older than people who are just becoming grandfathers now, because we ourselves are very old.
I think Grandpa probably enjoyed a Red Hook ESB occasionally. You don't think so?
I don't know. Henry's, yes.
Henry's?
Yeah.
I think Grandpa had a Red Hook and enjoyed it occasionally. But to me, Pike is one that it was hard for me to establish the timeline for it, because I feel like they've almost been like intentionally small for a long period of time.
I would agree with that assessment, yeah. So, but we see that their roots date back to the 1980s. So they have been around a long period of time, clearly.
Are we going to talk about the other beer later?
I think that let's have that be the play.
Okay.
All right, let's get to this week's toast then. Start off with an announcement that at long last, you have finally gotten together to put in the Talkin' Taco Time shirts, now available online at peltoncast.limitedrun.com. Obviously, we'll have that link in the post notes, and I'll also tweet it out. But if you have been waiting, your opportunity to get a Talkin' Taco Time shirt, the purple design, a very classic look that I sported the other day, those are available now for $15.
Hell yeah.
If
I'm
you've
excited.
changed that setting.
I have, yes.
Okay.
These are very, very limited quantity. I can't imagine we're ever going to print them again, right? The Peltoncast is all about small quantities. And
We're small batch brewing.
yeah, we're small batch brewing. what's the term? Artificial scarcity is what the Peltoncast does. We could print more if we wanted to. But no, the next merch item from the Peltoncast will be different. So this is to celebrate, of course, we didn't know it at the time, the 2023 Peltoncast MVP Talkin' Taco Time. Had to have a shirt in the year of Talkin' Taco Time. There are very few left. Get them as quickly as you can. I'll ship them this weekend. Whatever is ordered, we'll get them out quick.
Nice. All right. So again, peltoncast.limitedrun.com, or check that out on the post note at soniccentral.com/peltoncast or on Twitter.
And if you are outside of the U.S. and want one, just message us.
Shoot us a DM.
I will think about it.
All right. Our first actual toast this week. Congrats to the Seattle Thunderbirds on beating the Kamloops Blazers for the WHL Western Conference title. The T-Birds are facing the Winnipeg Ice in the WHL Finals, currently leading 2-1 after winning Tuesday's game in Kent at the Showair Center 6-3. Game 4 Wednesday, Game 5 Friday, with the Thunderbirds having the opportunity to close out at home before the series shifts back to Winnipeg for Games 6 and 7.
Should I skip Luca's birthday party and just go watch the T-Birds?
You were going to go on Wednesday night? You had to pick Friday night for that?
Is Wednesday tonight?
To Wednesday is tonight as this podcast comes out, yes.
I still like missing the child's birthday party.
Oh, okay. Well, since you decreed that adults can't play in the baseball game on his birthday.
In the wiffle ball game, you do not, I will tell you, with the curveballs that he throws with the fucking wiffle ball, you don't want to be hitting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, it would be an embarrassment.
I'm always on his team anyway.
I was thinking that we have to do the same thing, though, where you and I can still be the coaches.
Okay. All right, congrats.
As long as we can include the Pelton brothers in the birthday party in some capacity.
Oh, obviously. Like, if there's a competition, the fabulous Pelton brothers are going to be involved. Congrats to UW men's track and field, which claimed its first Pac-12 title ever.
Wow.
At Sunday's Conference Championships in Walnut Creek, California. Oregon had won the previous 15 Pac-12 championships. But
that streak is over. You're done, Oregon. You're slow.
Still quite fast. The Huskies won 7 events, including Brian Fay winning both the 5,000 to clinch it for the Huskies and the 10,000. Former Ducks assistant Andy Powell, who we talked about is head coach of the men's cross-country team earlier in the year when they were running to incredible historic times, serves in that same role for track and field.
Wow.
And has really just stepped up UW's program across the board.
Andy Powell. This is incredible. We went into your house and beat you at what you do best. This is like England inventing the sport of soccer and then being futile at it for the next 80 years. This is an incredible feat from the University of Washington.
I believe 1966 was in the next 80 years. I believe you mean for the last almost 60 years.
We're just tacking a few on at the end as insult. Also, we're stealing your players now, too.
And wow, you're using we to refer to the U.S.
It's true. It's true. I slipped. But beating Oregon at track and field, they said it could never be done. Just like the University of Washington winning in Autzen Stadium, but now it's commonplace. It happens all the time. Both of those events are frequent events that happen. We're done with you, Oregon. We're never going to cheer for you later on in this podcast.
Well, not Eugene specifically. All right, lastly this week, wanted to say a fond farewell to Big Blue, the original Marination truck, which they announced that they are retiring and donating to Seattle Community College for student use in the culinary program. This I did look up. Dates back to 2009 was the start of Marination operating as a food truck. I can't remember what the first time was I went there, but it had to be like 2010, 2011, a long period ago. Obviously, they continue to thrive. Is a brick and mortar business now, but Big Blue, the truck, sadly no more.
Okay, so I was off about this. I was like, Big Blue, isn't the truck big and silver? I was thinking of the skillet truck.
Yes,
is what I was thinking of. The Marination truck, I'm trying to think of, because I remember distinctly going to the skillet truck in like early, like 2000. They were around the same time that those two kind of like came about.
I mean, that was the start of the food truck era. It was coming out of the crash, that 2008, 2009 time period.
But the Marination truck specifically, I remember going to the Capitol Hill location quite a bit of Marination, but I know I went to the truck. I just don't distinctly have a memory of it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a period of time where they used to park in Inner Bay, so we could walk there from the Storm offices, and that was when we first went there. And then I remember definitely going when they were across the Montlake Cut in Ballard. So definitely many times at the Marination truck. This also seemed timely because I listened just today to the Chef Rewatchables, which is obviously about starting a food truck at the tail end of this, when they were super trendy in 2014 when that movie came out.
It was pretty funny listening to David Chang be vindictive about people where Bill Simmons was like, nobody would ever yell at a critic like this. And David Chang was like, I would have.
He also said he didn't have the opportunity to, but also at a different point in the podcast said he did do it to the brother of the actor Oliver Platt, who plays the food critic in this movie, since his brother is actually a food critic in New York.
I was wondering about this. Like, what does David Chang mean now as a celebrity chef? Like, is he still an impressive chef? Is this still is he in his peak era? Or has he reached saturation? Because I'm going to tell you straight up, I understand that Milk Bar is not a David Chang business.
It is not.
But it's sort of affiliated with David Chang, right?
They were originally located, yes, within Momofuku
I was at
properties.
Grocery Outlet, and Milk Bar, truffle cakes or whatever, were there at Grocery Outlet. And it's just they tried it, didn't work. Clearly. Not that everything at Grocery Outlet is amazing. I love every second of being in Grocery Outlet. I would have a podcast dedicated to it. But it also means that on the marketplace, it probably didn't hit. And I was thinking about...
I think there's a big difference between the stores themselves. They just opened the one in Bellevue. I'm sure it's doing amazing.
The Milk Bar store?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure that they are, but it's sort of they're not going to reach full saturation. And I feel like the David Chang thing, still very, very popular, but the world has changed around him. And I feel like that's what we kind of talked about, what he talked about on that podcast, which is the era of food in 2009, 2010 is different than it is now.
Yes. I mean, but I think that there's room when you reach that level of success to reseed and retrench a little bit and still be very successful. Still don't know if they're ever going to open up that Momofuku that they planned at one point in Vancouver. So,
oh wow,
TBD on that one.
That would really be successful. But we're going to Vegas in very soon, shockingly soon.
3 weeks, 4 weeks, somewhere in there.
And I will tell you, leading back to this, we're going to Roy Choi's best friend, but we're not going to Momofuku.
We haven't ruled out Momofuku. I still want to go, to be clear. We have 2 nights there.
It's a little bit less of a mandatory.
I mean, I definitely go there every time that I am in Vegas. So, or for an extended period at least.
I thought it was interesting where they were talking about also the food truck era is kind of over, and I don't know if I agree with that.
It's not over, it's just a different thing. There's not the same excitement over it, I don't think, that existed.
It was almost a trend, and it became bougie food trucks, and that food is always going to make its way back to kitchens, but food trucks were designed initially as more working class type food. And I do feel I
don't know if I would say that. I think they always appealed to white collar employees in the tech industry in particular. And guess what? I'm sure with everyone returning to campus at Amazon, I'm sure that the food truck industry is thriving in South Lake Union at the moment.
Okay, fair enough. I do feel it's become a little bit more those businesses are a little bit more working class than they were maybe in 2010. They're a little bit more, and because the thing is, food trucks are in the suburbs now. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Maybe that's not working class, but it's different than if you can only get a food truck, you have to go to fucking Amazon area.
It's not as hipster?
I think it's not as hipster, but it's also just the accessibility of it is I can be in the city of Renton and there can be food trucks, relatively good food trucks close to me in a way. The saturation is actually a positive. You know what I mean? The wealthy class hates saturation, right? Because they want to gatekeep all of these things. But being in the place where food trucks are everywhere, it means that they're more accessible for more people.
I think also when you go into the suburbs, a food truck might have it easier to like outcompete the local restaurants, so to speak, because there's not the same restaurant culture in the suburbs that there is in the heart of the city.
Oh, there's Panda Expresses everywhere.
Wanted to shout this out quickly while we're on the topic of food. I have not had a chance to try this yet, but Lil Woody's special this week along with the Pastry Project, the sweet and spicy chicken Sammy with gochujang, a hint of that apparently on there, and then a peach jam. So I'm very much looking
This is on a
forward to trying
croissant,
this.
right?
On a croissant, yes.
I saw that and I was like, okay.
Yeah, I love that. Like the treat cookies was there in the comments talking about, I can't wait to try this or something like that.
Were they?
Yeah.
Damn, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they kind of did the thing on that one. I saw that croissant and I was like, okay, I'm in. The Peltoncast could never, but do I want to eat it? Of course I do.
We never even considered it. We were trying to be more accessible.
Hurry up with my damn croissants.
Should we talk about the state of Oregon and their NBA team? Because
Absolutely, we should.
Because the NBA draft lottery was on Tuesday with Seattle's Brandon Roy, UW's Brandon Roy, representing the Blazers for the first time since he was on the stage in 2007 when the Northwest landed both top 2 picks.
That is wild. He was there representing the Blazers that day? Dang.
Can you guess who was representing the Sonics in the 2007 draft lottery? Now, some terrific dead air.
I'm really thinking about this one. Was it a player or a front office person?
Front office person.
Was it Wally?
No. Wally was not involved with the organization at that point.
I have no idea.
Lenny Wilkins.
Oh, of course.
I
It's
should've-
both. He's both.
He is both a player, also a Blazers player and coach from back in the day.
We're claiming him that, like, we don't need to mention that.
I'm
That's
just-
like being like Nick Collison also played for the Thunder too. It's like, I know, I saw him.
I'll
tell
it
you-
just occurred to me.
Me and Nick Collison, we're done. That's it. Representing the Thunder at the draft lottery, like being part of Thunder history, we're finished. We are not friends anymore. If the Sonics come, it's done. We've talked about this repeatedly, but basketball to Seattle is done. And when that happens, when the Sonics come back, do you know who is not part of Sonics history? Nick Collison is not part of Sonics history anymore. Thank you.
You don't get to decide that.
I'm deciding it right the fuck now. The second he was on stage for the Thunder, he is out of Sonics history. Any person who has claimed Thunder history is not part of Sonics history at that point. I want a bitter team to come back. Don't the Browns still don't put like Baltimore, right? Wait, hold on. I'm mixing the teams up.
Yeah.
Baltimore doesn't do this for the Colts.
Oh.
Is that right? I don't know which of there's all the teams moved
That is correct.
in the region.
Yes.
But I think for when the Ravens visit the Colts,
No, it's got to be the other round. I don't think that there's any bitterness in Indianapolis towards the Ravens.
the other way around. I don't know. One of them doesn't like they won't put the like team name
That seems possible.
when it happens. I just want like some level of bitterness. We want to compete, and I want some level of bitterness to be involved.
Okay. Well, it's
That
not going to be
bitterness
towards
right now
Nick
today.
Collison.
Seeing Nick Collison on that stage when they showed the fucking Thunder logo, I cheered when I saw that. And I also cheered as we went into the break, the most exciting moment in sports, going into the break knowing that your team is part of the lottery.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing better than that. I was standing, right? And it's like one of those moments where you can be so excited and then be so crestfallen so quickly as it happens. But so the Blazers end up with the number 3 pick in the draft, moving up 2 spots. What does this mean for the Blazers long term?
It means they're probably going to trade the pick. I mean, I thought it was always very likely that if they didn't get number 1, that they were going to trade the pick. But the particular way the lottery fell, I think makes it dramatically more likely. So after the San Antonio Spurs at number 1, we're going to take Victor Wembanyama. Then at number 2, you have Charlotte.
By the way, shouts to Windy being in France. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Wherever there's a good young player, Brian Windhorst is there.
And number 3 what is the Blazers. So you have 2 teams that really do not need point guards, where Scoot Henderson is, probably the considered by most people the number 2 prospect in this draft.
More than Brandon Miller?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, he's ahead. But so if you look at the mock draft that my ESPN colleague Jonathan Gavoni put out tonight after the lottery, he has Charlotte taking Brandon Miller at number 2, which would leave Scoot on the board for the Blazers. And suddenly, that's an opportunity for them to get real value for this pick. Because if you're a team that views Scoot Henderson as good enough to be the number 1 pick in a draft that didn't have
a non-Wemby draft,
a historical
normal NBA draft, right? You have a handful of drafts where there's once in a generation player, right? Or you have a clear-cut number 1.
Sometimes the once in a generation player goes 3rd and the picks gets traded.
I'll tell you. I mean, he wasn't one of them because of that. But it's LeBron, AD,
the NBA
Zion.
teams were not run by generational GMs, as it turned out.
Are these the right players, though? LeBron, AD, Zion, Wemby?
Yeah.
Kind of, right? Of the last, 2 decades.
Yeah.
I mean, Odin.
I think Odin and Durant both were actually considered in that tier.
But there was a conversation between the two. I think it was sort of like those two were at a different level.
Yes.
But so we're not talking about that many players ever. So in a normal draft where a lot of very good players have gone number 1, Paolo Banchero is a great player who went number 1.
Yeah.
Don't ask you. But if you ask anybody else in basketball.
Didn't say he wasn't a great player.
But most people consider Paolo Banchero a great number 1 pick, right? And for Scoot, in a different draft, he could be that guy. He almost likely would be that guy. Is he a John Wall type player?
I think more Derrick Rose stylistically than John Wall.
I mean, MVP right there.
I mean, that's obviously an incredibly good outcome for him. But in terms of that physical profile at his age, it is a lot, Westbrook is also kind of in that group, De'Aaron Fox, guys like that. And he doesn't come out that well in my statistical projections based on his production in the G League. But if you look at a lot of players who have outperformed those, often it tends to be those kind of uber athletic point guards who thrive when they get in the better floor spacing of the NBA.
Okay.
So
the G League doesn't have good floor spacing?
The Ignite did a better job with that this season. They put some, shooting specialists around him. But
didn't they have 3 top 10 picks on the team?
This year?
Yeah.
No.
Who are the 2 brothers?
Those players, Amon and Asar Thompson, play for Overtime Elite, not G League Ignite.
Are they a G League team?
No.
Okay.
This is a totally independent program.
Okay. It's just wild now.
Yes. So
don't tell Kyle Ben about this.
Leonard Miller.
Times are different than when he was in college in the 60s.
Leonard Miller from the G League Ignite team is also likely to be a first-round pick this year. And they just brought in kind of some veteran shooters. John Jenkins was part of that team, one-time NBA first-round pick.
Okay. But the follow-up question is, so you're saying Scoot's going to be there, a good chance Scoot is there, number 3.
I mean, Charlotte may take Scoot. Someone may trade with Charlotte for Scoot. But
Brandon Miller's there at number 3.
So I'm saying if Brandon Miller is there, I think it makes it somewhat less likely the Blazers would trade the pick because Miller is someone who could come in and actually help them win immediately.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be great as a rookie.
He's not going to fix their cap problems also.
No, but he would immediately probably start for them at small forward.
Okay.
And he's 6'9" and can defend, players well and is a good shooter. Every team can use a Brandon Miller. The question is just kind of whether he has superstar upside because of his shot creation. But again, if you're the Blazers, that's maybe not as important to you in terms of helping Damian Lillard win is your floor right now.
Okay.
So if Brandon Miller is there, I think it's less likely they trade the pick. If Scoot is there, I think it is highly likely they trade the pick.
They don't need any more guards. The Blazers have done the thing with guards.
That they could have access to really good players with that pick.
Who are the players?
OG Anunoby is going to be the most likely name, I think, to come up. And what's interesting about this is we've heard teams throwing multiple first-round picks in offers to Toronto for OG, but those are teams that are generally pretty competitive. You don't expect, maybe those are lottery protected picks, maybe they're not. You don't expect any of them to be this good a pick. So even one first round pick, if it's number 3 overall, could trump multiple first round picks from other teams.
Is OG that dude?
I mean, if you're like looking in terms of fit with Portland and who could help you win the most next season, he's pretty high on that list, I think.
What about long term?
Well,
How old is he?
He's young. I think he's like 25.
Okay.
The concern is that he's only under contract for one more year and would be difficult to extend. So you'd have to
Because
re-sign
of being
him.
traded or because of like...
The trade restrictions are lessened in the new CBA. I don't know for sure if that kicks in right away, but it's more that even a 40% raise, which is now the most you can offer a player, is still not enough to beat what Oji Anunoby will probably get on the open market because he's only scheduled to make $18.6 million next season.
But they can't max him out for more?
They could in free agency. It's just a risk that you'd have to let him get to free
He'd
agency.
have to go to free agent,
But
and then they can pay him more than any other team can?
that is a risk they took this year with Jeremy Grant, so it's not something that would be unprecedented, certainly.
Okay, there's 2 questions. And we're probably talking too much about a team from Portland, but I'm excited. Knowing that the Blazers, they have Shaden, right? Like, they've got a young player that they're going to develop. You told me that you thought they were going to trade him. Now it seems maybe less likely.
I mean, he played well enough at the end of the season that changes the situation. And then also, part of the reason, I mean, I think if you were to do a trade like this, it's very possible that Anthony Simons could be evolved, both in terms of matching salary and because of the fact that, if you do add another perimeter player, you've got Shaden Sharp and Damian Lillard. Like, it starts to be a bit of a crowd there.
Where are the Blazers in these 2 scenarios where it's basically the same team, but it's plus OG Anunoby, and it's basically the same team, but it's plus Brandon Miller? Where are they next year and maybe the year after that?
I mean, I don't think Brandon Miller changes their life next season. Like, they're still in that mix fighting for a spot in the play-in. How quickly he develops. Maybe you can start to progress from there.
But you can also see a young core between Shaden and Brandon Miller.
Right. So
What
OG
about
next year, I mean, the West, first off, there's a lot to come, and the West is going to be difficult to predict. I mean, like, what is Dallas going to be like next season with a full season of Kyrie and Luka Doncic?
Were they better with those 2 players?
No, they were worse, but they also were not healthy
But
necessarily.
maybe it'll work for us.
But
This'll
saying,
be the
like,
time.
if you're the Blazers, you can't confidently say, "Oh yeah, for sure we're going to be better than the team that has Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving."
But also, like, what are they competing for at that point? Like, Dame is not getting younger. Is there any possibility that this pick leads them to trade Dame?
I just don't think that's something they're going to explore until or unless that it's something that Damian Lillard asks for.
Okay.
So, I mean, maybe if they drafted Scoot Henderson with this pick, then Dame would be like,
They wouldn't draft
yeah,
Scoot
guys.
without Dame. Like, they would have to. Dame is involved enough in the organization that they would have to be like, we're trading you for these 6 draft picks or whatever, and we're just going to draft Scoot.
I mean,
This could be a window for the Dame to request the trade very seamlessly.
it would be. It's kind of not totally dissimilar to, like, it became easier for the Pelicans to trade Anthony Davis once they knew they were getting Zion Williamson.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
I still don't see that coming.
You think Dame is a lifer for the Blazers?
I didn't say I thought he was a lifer. I don't see him requesting a trade this offseason.
You think he's going to give it a go at least for another year or 2 with this roster generally as it is? If I'm a Blazers fan, what do I want to happen? Do I want them just to stick there and take Brandon Miller or take Scoot?
I mean, Miller sort of threads the needle perhaps the best in terms of, again, as compared to anyone they could have gotten if they were 5th or 6th. He's more likely to help them next season, but also can be part of a future core. But it also might be a scenario where it kind of leaves you in that unhappy middle where you're not good enough to compete next year, and still you're counting on what you get in a Dame trade to build the core up.
That's Blazers basketball, baby. The
Uncomfortable middle.
unhappy middle.
Oh, wow.
It's been, look, we've had almost 2 decades of this now. We understand what it's like.
I don't know if I would say that.
Has there ever been a moment where you're like, we're winning it all this year, or the team is awful? There basically
No,
has
but
not
I mean, if you
been
look
a
at
season.
the Roy Aldridge era, or
You're like, one series. We've got one series in us.
but you're like, this team has the potential to compete for a championship.
If you're really, really positive.
I mean, I had high expectations for that team, high hopes for that team, and obviously, like,
It's also
health
been a
didn't
long
permit it.
time since those two players were playing together.
Fair. It's not been 2 decades.
I'm just saying, it's been a long time that the Blazers have been in, like, I mean, the fucking Spurs always figured out, right? Like, the Spurs have had some bad years now, but the Spurs having a couple of bad years, being competitive for most of the decade. And
I mean,
then
they were even in the play-in 2 years ago. This was the only year that they were really non-competitive.
the string of David Robinson to Tim Duncan to Wemby as he is, boom, 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 right? Like, it's kind of incredible what the Spurs have pulled off.
But I think it's important to understand perspective. Like, if you're a Detroit Pistons fan, granting that you had the number 1 pick a couple of years ago, you're looking at it and saying that we went 17-65, had the worst record in the league, and we're picking behind this Blazers team that just basically tanked their way into 5th in the last month of the season. So, it's all relative. Anything else in the Blazers?
I guess I weep for the Pistons. I don't think things are going to go well for them.
I
That was when they came up 5. I was like, oh, sorry.
That was well. That's when you knew the Blazers jumped up. So
Exactly. But it was a little bit of like, oh, sorry, Pistons. Wish it was somebody like Houston. If it would have been Houston, I'd been like, although Houston's in a pretty uncomfortable position also, right?
Well, they're in a complex position.
Because they're going to sign James Harden.
It seems quite possible. They certainly seem to think so. All right,
Should we do this beer before we get into anything else?
sure. Let's crack this open. Anything else to say on the Space Needle West Coast IPA
I'm curious to try beer number 2 and to consider them in.
head to head?
Yeah.
The citrus flavor is very strong
thought
in
that was pretty good.
the West Coast Space Needle West Coast IPA.
Okay, can I ask what makes it a West Coast IPA?
So West Coast is like the type of hops basically
Okay.
distinguish it for the most part, and whether they specifically are called West Coast IPAs or not, IPAs made in Seattle are generally going to use those hops.
Okay.
So, all right. So the 2 beers from our friends at Two Beers Brewing Company, the Wonderland Trail IPA, inspired by the Wonderland Trail, an exhilarating 93-mile trek around Mount Rainier. This beer honors the treasures of the Pacific Northwest, blending Washington-grown Amarillo, Citra, Mosaic, and Cascade hops. The sweet aroma of tangerine is followed by a wave of citrus and passion fruit.
There we go.
So-
Man, that sounds great.
It does sound great. I agree.
I saw Mount Rainier today, driving along. I'm just like, nothing better than the summer in the Northwest.
The mountain was out. Especially when the summer comes in mid-May. Very, very unusual situation.
Wow, totally different beer than the last one.
It's interesting because it's not as strong as citrus flavor, in my opinion.
Wow, I was going to say it was more citrusy.
Wait, really? You think so? All right, I still have a little more of this.
That's kind of wild. This to me, the Pike one, you could taste hops a little bit more, and the Two Beers one it's a smoother, sort of like washed over taste. Would you agree with that?
I mean, it's got a little bit more of an intense aftertaste to me, I would say.
There's nothing that's like one flavor that's really strong and stands out.
We need Zach Jabal to give us our Jordan McKay of IPAs. Maybe he is the Jordan McKay of IPAs. Tell us exactly what we should be looking for. That was the other thing, by the way. When I was watching Chef, I was like, "Oh man, the bark on that brisket."
Oh, that's good bark.
At Franklin Barbecue. Oh, you could just tell.
I would say these are pretty radically different beers, though, considering they are both what would be considered West Coast IPAs. The Pike one, I would say, is more sharp, much more hoppy.
I see. I don't necessarily think this.
Whereas the Two Beers one, to me, is much more muted. It's like I think the Two Beers one is a more like everything is merged together into one flavor palette, rather than the Pike IPA. I think things stand out a little bit more.
Do you feel like either of these is a competitor for Seattle's best IPA?
I really like this 2 beers one.
Huh. I feel like I prefer the Space Needle.
They were both pretty good,
Interesting.
I gotta say.
All right. Well,
I also don't understand how people drink IPAs without having a terrible headache the next day. Maybe that's just me, but like IPAs in particular, my head will hurt from drinking them.
I don't know if necessarily that's an issue. With that, I think it's time for your favorite segment.
Don't burn yourself. We got Mariners hot takes coming at ya.
Everyone has been talking about Zelda lately. The game is great. But you know what Triforce I'm more excited about? Bryce Miller, George Kirby, and Logan Gilbert. The best fucking young pitching staff in baseball ever. The only tears that are being spread in this kingdom are from American League batters trying to hit this young staff. And here's a link to the past. We're talking with this young staff. They make the 2000s A's, 1990s Braves. Pitching staffs look like dubious food. These are some Hyrule warriors right here. Bryce Miller walked straight out of nowhere and pulled the Master Sword out of stone. He has been unstoppable and must-see TV with a sure-to-continue 18-1 strikeout-to-walk ratio and a 421 whip. His start makes 2000 Pedro look like Tingle. Kirby is steady and dominant, and don't let Logan Gilbert's ERA fool you. With his FIP at 2.68 and strikeout to walk ratio at 10 plus, hitters are looking like they're playing Boko baseball when he pitches. So, with this young staff plus Castillo, you don't need to lift a rock to find a Korok underneath. To find the best young core in baseball history, it's right here in Seattle.
I understand about a third of those references.
Yeah, to Bryce Miller, George Kirby,
Exactly.
and Logan Gilbert. I will tell you, I said last week,
So which one of them is power, which one of them is wisdom, and which one of them is courage?
power's Bryce Miller.
Okay.
Wisdom is George Kirby. Wisdom might be Logan Gilbert.
I feel like Logan Gilbert is more wisdom in this.
And
in this analogy.
courage is George Kirby. You just you Googled Triforce really fast.
I did. I did. You stole some of my Bryce Miller stats. I don't like that.
I will tell you straight up. Bryce Miller is maybe the greatest pitcher in the history of baseball. Honestly, statistically, it's kind of undebatable.
You know, the important thing is to recognize that sample size is a myth and is a
Absolutely
regression
is.
to the mean. You mentioned his whip, 0.42 thus far. Per Alex Mayer of the Mariners, the lowest through a player's first 3 starts with at least 15 total innings pitched in Major League Baseball history.
History. That's what I said. History.
Excluding nobody. Yeah, you mentioned the 18-1 strikeout to walk ratio.
Fuck you, Gary Wood. Fuck you, Mark Pryor.
1 run allowed through those 3 starts. The Mariners, with Bryce Miller solidifying that 5th spot in the rotation, have not had a start of fewer than 5 innings in all of May thus far, with just 3 of those fewer than 6 innings. So,
It's kind of incredible. But I do think, so I said a week ago, everybody was talking about the Mariners pitching staff being one of the best pitching staffs ever, right? As I just hotly taked.
it was a real old chicks Tristan move to go from, they don't seem like they're pitching that good, to best young core of all time.
Well, there's been
Excluding
at least 1 Miller start since then, maybe 2. And
I agree.
like,
It was unfortunately a very bad Luis Castillo start on Tuesday night.
dude, I just straight up Fenway Park should not exist. That's a take for you. How do you have that porch in right field?
And
that's
they just kept hitting balls out there, and it's like, that was
I
like
mean,
a routine fly ball.
Taylor Trammell also got a home run
He
from
did,
it. So
yes.
it's not like we can't complain that much, but like, come on, people.
Move the fence back.
I think the reason that the pitching staff has seemed like they haven't been as good as they are statistically, this is a little bit of like anti-fund differential stuff, is Logan Gilbert is having a pretty dominant season statistically, and by advanced statistically, and by old school statistics, Logan Gilbert is having a kind of bad season, or at least like a mediocre season.
Yeah, he's having a fine season in
That
terms
to
of his
me
ERA.
is the biggest difference between almost everybody is right around their FIP, and for whatever reason, it's shocking because of how many batters he's striking out. It's just for the balls are falling or going out of the park for Logan Gilbert when otherwise they shouldn't be. And he's kind of the only one.
Yeah.
On the staff. It's not like Castillo is. It's not like Marco Gonzalez is. I went and checked everybody just to be like, is this a thing that's happening across the board?
Is it a defensive thing? Yeah.
The defense is good. It's just Logan Gilbert.
Yeah.
And that is a thing that it's fucking May, right? Despite what the weather might tell you. That, look, no complaints. 10 out of 10. Maybe 15 out of 10. I think that is what has made the difference from statistically, this is like one of the best starts ever for a pitching staff versus the feel of it. Like I looked at his last 5 starts and it's like 4 earned runs, 5 earned runs. You know, he hasn't had like a dominant game. Logan Gilbert is the difference between them feeling dominant and also Bryce Miller's only made 3 starts. And so as Bryce Miller keeps going, he starts the All-Star game. He's starting the World Series, like 27 strikeouts for the first time ever. The first
time since the Scout.
In the Scout, struck out everybody?
I'm pretty sure that's the ending of it.
What is the Scout? Wait, I don't even know this movie.
You don't know this movie?
I'm more familiar with Rookie of the Year over here, but
there's a play. I mean, I haven't watched this movie in comfortably 2.5 decades.
Who's in the Scout?
I forget who plays the pitcher. I want to say Brendan Fraser, but I don't.
I thought it was Brendan Fraser too.
Okay.
Is there a monkey, like Mickey Mantle's monkey involved?
What? I don't. I think you're thinking of Friends. Logan Gilbert's WAR is not actually that high. He's only got half a WAR thus far. So he's got as many as Easton McGee. So I don't think that's necessarily the issue per se. I think that's a good sign for the Mariners pitching staff going forward that everyone else is not outperforming their FIP other than Bryce Miller is a little bit. It's 1.57. It still would be the greatest of all time. It still would make early
He's
pager.
like, you know that dude Roki Sasaki in Japan where people just tweet stats? Nobody has ever seen any of the games.
Tungsten Marmo Doyle.
They literally just like tweet stats about Roki Sasaki and you're like, something is happening in Japan, right? Bryce Miller is better. We're seeing it right here in Major League Baseball. Roki Sasaki sucks compared to Bryce Miller. Everybody sucks compared to Bryce Miller. He's the perfect baseball player.
Harsh but fair.
Pitcher. I think he maybe should start hitting.
I don't think he should, actually.
I just wouldn't rule it out.
I was intrigued to see Masataka Yoshida play for the Red Sox today because I had heard his name last offseason in free agency, but had never seen him play. And he's very undersized, but
You
took
were
advantage of that
happy
short porch.
About seeing a play. What? This is
Fair.
fucking Nick Collison shit.
Fair.
Like,
Fair.
you're like, I really appreciated that Oregon won their 16th running championship. What are you talking about?
I don't think the Red Sox are our enemy in this one. They are not the Oregon in this situation.
Everybody is our enemy on this one. For a Japanese baseball player, it's been a while since the Mariners have signed one. Yusei Kikuchi is not walking through that door.
That's fair.
I asked Luca to name another Japanese player that the Mariners had. He failed miserably. He said Hideki Matsui.
You need to double his 2001 Mariners research.
I'll tell you straight up. I was like, there's a lot of them. I would have taken Makoto Suzuki,
Kenji Jojima?
Kenji Jojima, Kazuhiro Sasaki,
Yeah.
and Yusei. Right? Is that every Japanese player
No, there has to be more than that.
who's played in the majors?
For the Mariners?
Yeah.
Did Makoto Suzuki pitch in the majors? I'm pretty sure at some point he did.
He was an important player in our lifetime. Same with Ryan
I do
Anderson.
not still have to sign baseball with the Makoto Suzuki autograph. Did Shigetoshi Hashigawa pitch for the Mariners after his prime?
He might have. That's different, though.
Sure. It's still a Japanese player.
Anyway, I'm just saying straight
Also, the
up.
position player that they gave the most money to, right? And before AJ Pollock, the most money in free agency in the Jerry Dipoto era. Wasn't that a Japanese player?
Was
Or
it?
am I misremembering this entirely?
I thought it was Sean Figgins. No.
Not the Jerry Dipoto era. Oh, boy.
Wait, look up who that person was because I've forgotten who that was.
I
Anyway,
don't really know how to look this up, but
the Mariners, Japanese players.
okay.
The loss today aside, I do feel like things are trending in the right direction for the Mariners. And I don't know what their advanced odds are of making the playoffs, but if I had to give a vibes odds of making the playoffs, I feel like there's a pretty good chance right now. I feel like the vibes odds from just watching the team and seeing how they're evolving, they're figuring out the team right now. Like Scott Service is figuring out the roster.
10-6 in the last 16 games.
I feel like it's like a 75%.
Oh wow, that's very high.
There are a lot of very good
Fangraph still has it at 26%.
There are a lot of very good teams in the AL East. I think that's the more complicated issue is the amount of teams that they have to get past. I think every single team in the AL East is ahead of them right now.
I did not realize that. That is correct. They are all ahead of them. I did not realize the Red Sox were playing that well. That's part of why I didn't think they were a rival. I assumed the Red Sox were playing terribly because I saw the ERAs of their projected starters for the next 2 games on the broadcast last night, and they were not good.
The funny thing is, despite what the Mariners and Mariners Twitter might tell you, hitting is actually more important than pitching. So having a lot of hits and scoring a lot of runs is a little bit more important than having the best pitching of all time.
I appear to have just invented this player that they gave money to.
I'm trying to think of who it was, who their biggest signing was. It was somebody hilarious.
It's in the AJ Pollock notes, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. No, it was somebody funny.
When they signed AJ Pollock. So I can dig this up if I go back far enough here. But they're definitely not a Japanese player, as it turns out. No, I guess it was not in the AJ Pollock notes. Quite surprising. Okay. Should we talk about the Kraken? Oh, I did want to mention Julio moved out of the leadoff spot the day after the last podcast when we discussed his slow start. Since
He's
then,
been hitting the ball so hard. I just swear to God. Julio's fine.
7 of 24, 3 walks, a home run in the last week. So, yeah, I agree that things are fine. Should we talk about the Seattle Kraken season coming to an end in their second Game 7 in his mini playoff series? A 2-1 loss Monday at Dallas that you actually watched the entirety of?
No, definitely not.
Oh, okay. How much of it did you watch?
I started in the second-ish period. I checked in and out.
You did not miss any scoring in this first period.
It was one of those things where I was watching the Mariners game and I was like, I can feel that something good is about to happen. I thought that today too, and it did not. Actually, I did, and then they had their 4th inning, but then I thought it again, and then it didn't. But I was like, something good is about to happen. I'm going to wait this out. And then Cal Raleigh hits a homer, and I'm like, I made the right call.
Homered from both sides of the plate, the first catcher in the history of Fenway Park to do that in game.
We're getting a little bit into
very granular.
Yeah.
Look, this is what Alex Mayer is doing. Okay.
Who is Alex Mayer?
He's part of their sports information department.
Can we have Alex Mayer on the pod?
I suppose we can ask.
Is Alex Mayer on Twitter?
Yes.
Let's fucking do it.
He follows me on Twitter, so there's a chance here.
Alex Mayer is a fucking legend, right?
I agree.
Right? The person from sports radio said that I invented the take. We all agree. And Alex Mayer invented the stat.
The hot take. You invented the hot take.
The hot take. Alex Mayer invented the stat.
He does terrific work.
Let's fucking... Because people ran with that stat.
They did. I agree they ran with that
People
stat.
were like... It was like big baseball reporters were like, history being made at Fenway. And I'm like, I guess... I mean, it's history in as much as any at bat. There's like a TikTok that's like random baseball moments. It's like,
well, did you see the thing on Twitter the other night where the MLB app started like giving people score updates from games from the 1980s or something? I forget exactly.
That's
what
literally history.
It is history.
There's like a Julio Franco like fouls the ball off in June, just like random MLB moments, and you're like, yeah, this is history. Somebody is recording this. This is being recorded, so... Anyway.
So this is our Kraken section.
We're having him on the pod.
All right, I'll send DM. You didn't miss any scoring in that first period, largely because Philip Grubauer was completely shutting down Dallas for a long period of time.
I was
standing
so
on his head
vindicated for not watching the first period of hockey. I'm sorry, but having a whole
You
period
missed some excitement.
into a break, we need to talk hockey. It's not great.
You missed some excitement on Saturday in Game 6 when the Kraken won at home 6-3 to extend the series. But the Stars got the opening goal midway through the second period from Rope Hintz, and then Wyatt Johnson doubled the lead with 7:12 left in the third period, forcing the Kraken to pull Grubauer still with the extra attacker, did not find the net until Oliver Bjorkstrand scored with 19 seconds remaining. And that just was not really enough time to mount a real effort at a comeback. But
It was fun, though.
it wasn't. I mean, playing hockey for sure.
You can't
You
tell
were
me it wasn't
playing
fun.
soccer.
Come on.
Oh, it was. But if it had been like a minute left, you would have been like, okay, there's a chance.
Oh, I thought there was a chance. They had like
They had one good. Yeah, they had one good shot.
Don't underrate how good of a shot they had. They saw the darkness a little bit too hard.
That's true.
Sometimes you see a little bit too much darkness.
Sometimes you see all of the darkness. But still, the Kraken finished with a -1 goal differential in the playoffs, playing against two of the NHL's best teams in the Central Division bracket. An incredible run by the Kraken that I think has just kind of has grown probably some lifelong hockey fans in the city of Seattle, and at least has engaged the casual fan base in a way that their first season didn't. Who?
Deholi. Sasi Iwakuma, we forgot about.
Okay.
Deholi is Korean, though.
That is, yeah, that is, he is not Japanese now.
I'm really trying to find who this player was.
It was not him. I don't remember who it was anymore.
Was it Ken Giles? Is there a chance that it was Ken Giles?
No, it definitely wasn't Ken Giles.
Okay.
Do you want me to look this up?
I'm just fascinated at this point, to be honest.
By the way, the scoreboard in Baltimore refuses to refer to Indianapolis as the Colts. It only refers to them as Indy, even though all other teams are referred to by team nickname.
See, that's what I'm about.
So
In Baltimore,
yes,
these motherfuckers have won 2 Super Bowls, and they're still upset about it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. It's not like they're ignoring the present, right? They've won 2 Super Bowls. They had the best defense of all time. They have Lamar Jackson, and they still hate the Colts. That's what I want. I want to be winning championships and to personally hate Oklahoma City and, sorry, Nick Collison. Nick Collison personally forever.
Oh, you know what? It was someone Japanese.
Who was it?
Nori Aoka.
Oh, Nori Aoka.
Aoki, I should
Aoki.
say.
Norichiko Aoki. All right.
So, all right. That was stuck somewhere in the recesses of my brain. And not enough so that I recognized his name when I was looking at a list of Japanese players in Major League Baseball, because I do not remember that this person ever played for the Mariners.
It was a nice run.
It was not my Mariners. The 2016 Mariners are not part of my Mariners history, I would say.
Oh, Jerry DiPoto's been around for that long.
Yeah.
He really has turned this team into basically the same as they were, but there's more playoff spots.
They're younger. At no point during the Zarensik era where you referred to the team as having the best young starters in trio in
Like it's
baseball
only
history.
3 starts from Bryce Miller.
Oh, now it's only been 3 starts.
No, we're all excited about Felton and Celestin. That's what we're about. Just give me 16 years old and Dominican, we're good.
So let's look ahead with the Kraken. Vince Dunn is their most notable free agent, having averaged more than 23 minutes of ice time in the playoffs as part of their defensive top line. He will be restricted. GM Ron Francis said after the trade deadline, the Kraken had decided to put off extension talks with Dunn until after the season, so that's certainly a possibility. Reserve defenders Will Borgen, who is also restricted, also had some extension talks, and Carson Soucy are also free agents. Is our center Ryan Donato and winger Daniel Sprong. Another interesting free agent is backup goaltender Martin Jones, with Grubauer's strong playoff run really establishing him as the Kraken's number 1 going forward, and Chris Drieger, now a year removed from the ACL tear he suffered from Team Canada for Team Canada last summer. Seems unlikely Jones would be back, but we'll see exactly where they are in that. Kraken should have some cap space to play with, I think, in free agency this offseason to continue adding to this group.
I still think the biggest mistake that they could make is saying we're good. Is they win these 2 series, both as underdogs, and being like, this is the team that can take us to the Stanley Cup final. Because I don't think that's it. And I really do think watching this game against the Stars, even if they'd won this game 7, the Kraken were not going to the Stanley Cup finals. Like,
I mean, they could have because it's hockey and shit is very
Exactly.
random in the
But,
playoffs.
like-
but yes, they were not as good as Dallas over
Dallas
the course of
is
the
a
series.
better team. We were on the phone and it's like the Kraken scored, and you're like, the Stars scored. they have the firepower that those teams have, right? That Winnipeg and Vegas and Dallas, that these teams have.
I think you're thinking of Edmonton.
Edmonton, yeah, Canada,
Not Winnipeg.
the whole country. That Edmonton and Vegas and Dallas, that they have, it's different than the Kraken, right? They don't. But Matty Beniers is obviously very, very young.
I mean, so the interesting thing is, like, this team was actually not that young. Like, people would often refer to the Kraken as a young team, and they are young in the sense that it was only their second year as an organization. But the players on the team weren't necessarily that young.
I mean, they're still mostly made up of players that they got through the expansion draft.
Right. But Beniers is kind of, he's the timeline, I would say.
God. Every time you say somebody's the timeline,
Oh,
then we
no.
don't sign Trey Turner.
I don't know that Trey Turner is going to be an option for the Kraken. He's already under contract in baseball. They get a lot of money there, way more than he would. Who knows if he could even skate?
Can't even skate.
I mean, but Beniers was one of their best players this season. Didn't have a great postseason necessarily, but he's 20. Like, there's a lot of upside there. And to me,
Trey
the
Turner's
biggest,
playing just fine right now. Like, I would maybe take J.P. Crawford.
the biggest mistake to me they could make is being too obsessed with we have to be good in 2024, as opposed to continuing to think somewhat long term. And they have, extra draft picks in this year's draft still from the previous trade deadline. So I don't think they're going to do that. But
J.P. Crawford outwarring. J.P. Crawford's war is always like deceptively good.
he's playing really well this season.
When they moved up to leading off, I was like, yeah, I'll take him.
Still a lot of Mariners talk in this Kraken segment.
He is outwarring Trey Turner so far.
There
So
you go.
you could take a W on that one. Nobody else, but like, that's one. You can't take a W on that the Mariners are probably going to pay Shohei, because we'll see.
We sure will.
See if they have $1 billion. I just want it to hit $1 billion just because it'd be fascinating.
I mean, is that a possibility? A 20-year $1 billion contract?
I don't even know if it needs to be a 20-year $1 billion contract.
Okay.
He's Shohei.
I mean, he is uniquely skilled in baseball.
What was the Aaron Judge contract?
What was the Aaron
Not
Judge
that
contract?
far off.
Of $1 billion? I'm pretty sure it was. How much do you think they're making on an annual basis?
$360 million.
Yeah, that's a lot off from $1 billion, man.
It's definitely going to be 500 plus.
500, I will concede.
Like, there's not even a conversation that it's going to be 500 plus.
I mean, maybe Shohei doesn't necessarily want that long of a contract, but that's the only reason not to.
The Mariners will approach him with like a 2-year deal. They'll be like, look, we have a lot of money tied up in 2027. We can only sign you for 2 years.
It's like a mock off season where one of us is like, "What are you thinking about a 2-year deal, Shohei Ohtani?" Do they do an MLB mock off season? Has anyone coffee dunked on in baseball? That's a great question.
They should.
Should I be a part of that one too? Just extend
You
it.
know nothing about baseball.
Doesn't
but
matter. I know mock off seasons.
Wow.
Who else is on
That's
two
who you're
mock off
approaching
seasons?
is with your knowledge of mock off seasons, not baseball or baseball contracts.
No, absolutely not. Learn that.
I like it. You're like, yeah, the Mariners are going to sign Shohei. I think.
All right. Any other last
2
thoughts on the
years,
Kraken?
100 million?
Kraken, again, the team that currently has just reached the
Currently
conference
lost.
semifinals.
I have no more thoughts on this team. They're done. We're not talking about them for like another 6 months.
We're going to do an off-season preview at some point.
Didn't we just do it?
We'll do a real one at some point.
For
With someone
what?
who understands hockey.
You're gonna tell me about all the fucking players in the WHL or other hockey players that they're gonna sign? I know more about Nori Aoki than I know about any other hockey players. The maximum amount of hockey players I know are Ottinger and Jamie Benn. Period.
Not even Joe Pavelski. That didn't sink in. He
I think-
scored the most goals in the series.
I've definitely forgotten every other. I don't even remember the team they played in the first round.
All right, guess.
taking way too
The segment, or you coming up with the answer?
coming up with the answer. I actually don't remember. Okay.
It was the Colorado Avalanche.
Oh, yes. Avalanche, yeah.
Yeah.
Could I name a player from the Avalanche? Can you name a player from the Avalanche?
Cale Makar?
Okay, yeah, I remember him. He was the dude who fucking hurt our player.
Nathan McKinnon?
Me and Makar enemies.
Oh, I mean, fair.
He's basically Nick Collison to me.
Boy. All right, let's
How
talk
are you
about the
defending
Sounders.
him?
We literally are friends.
Oh, friends.
Sounders crashed out of the U.S. Open Cup in Carson
I
with
told you I was
reverse
going to be on board
reserves.
for this podcast.
You did
Give
tell
me
me that.
two
You
IPAs.
didn't warn me. And Tacoma Defiance players in the starting 11 against an LA Galaxy team that started Chicharito, among other starters. Sounders fell behind early again on a score outside the box in the 3rd minute, then allowed a second in the 66th minute before pulling one back shortly thereafter with Paul Rothrock heading home Ethan Dobelaire's delivery, but Galaxy put it away with a 3rd goal in the 84th minute.
Probably like too close.
I don't know if I would say that necessarily.
It's like definitely they brought a knife to a fist fight.
That's true. On Saturday, the Sounders were in Houston to face the Dynamo, where the teams waited out a 45-minute late delay shortly after starting. The Dynamo were then reduced to 10 men in the 21st minute for a high boot called on VAR, and then to 9 for a second yellow card in the 78th minute. Seattle native Paul Rothrock, again promoted on a short-term contract and subbed in minutes before, finished a cross that went through a crowd to get to him in the 87th minute to give the Sounders the long-awaited breakthrough.
All right, that's
and
an
the full 3
iconic move
points.
from Paul Rothrock.
It
Is
very much
such
is.
a good play from a player from Seattle that you didn't vote him for Rookie of the Year. Wow.
I don't know if he's going to be eligible for MLS Rookie of the Year. I think he's only allowed to play in 2 more games this season.
I mean, Walker Kessler somehow was eligible.
The Sounders are in action Wednesday. Their first midweek MLS match of the season is they host Austin FC. Austin comes in 12th in the West standings with less than a point per match after finishing 2nd last year.
This is more, I like this better. Like, look, love Austin. No offense to the city. They should not have finished 2nd in the West in MLS in their first season or whatever.
They're not even in the Pacific Northwest. And losing in the conference finals, they've gotten just 2 goals thus far from Sebastian Jurissi, who had 22 last year to
They've
rank
got that
2nd.
incredible bark.
That's true.
They don't need MLS
Think
goals.
of our mark in MLS. Jurissi has missed the
We had to
last 2
abandon
games.
our barbecue search because the barbecue wasn't good enough.
No, that's not why we abandoned.
If we were in fucking Austin, Texas, we would not even do a barbecue search. We would be sponsored by a barbecue.
That's fair.
It would be the Peltoncast sponsored by, probably not Franklin Barbecue, but like, I don't know, maybe.
Depends whether they liked our vibes. Does Aaron Franklin like sports? No one does. Who
I'm
can
sure
tell?
Aaron Franklin likes sports. He's probably very bummed about Austin FC being 12th in the West in soccer.
He did welcome Simmons there, clearly.
Yeah.
So, and Jalen Rose. Former Sounder Will Bruin scored the equalizer last Saturday. Is Austin Drew at Portland?
Will Bruin still playing, huh?
Yeah.
He's on like the Kyle Ben era.
I don't know if that's true.
He's been in every era of the Sounders and Austin FC. He was on the Sounders in like the fucking, what are they called? Not net pre-MLS.
The USL.
The USL. Yeah, Will Ben was there. Will Bruin. That's his name. Is Will Ben now?
You are definitely on one. On Saturday, the Sounders.
Has Will Bruin not been around forever?
Not forever, no. I think you're thinking of Nate Jaqua.
He was too.
On Saturday, the Sounders head north of the border to face Vancouver for the first time this season. The Whitecaps currently 8th in the West standings, but 7th in points per match. They had lost 3-1 at Portland last weekend, which sometimes...
Very conflicting for us. For all of our rivals.
Oh, definitely Vancouver is a way less of a rival
That's a
than
preferable
Portland.
rival.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not a derby match when we play Vancouver. Somehow it is when we play Portland.
It's still a derby match. It still
Geographically
counts in the
speaking, Vancouver
Cascadia Cup.
significantly closer.
But you got to factor in the time to cross the
The
border.
border crossing.
Brian Schmetzer revealed last week that Nuhu's extended absence from the lineup was due to malaria.
What the fuck? Okay. Is that a thing people get?
Presumably contracted when he went home to play for his national team.
Still. Okay.
It is a thing that people get. It's treatable, thankfully. Schmetzer told reporters on Tuesday that Nuhu will be available for Wednesday's match, along with Leo Chu, who missed a week with a foot injury, while Rui Diaz could be back at the weekend. Still no timetable for Christian Roldan's return from that concussion that unfortunately has produced lingering symptoms. OL Reign suffered their second loss of the season and saw their 7-match unbeaten streak across Challenge Cup and regular season play come to an end on the road against the North Carolina Courage in a 1-0 loss on Sunday. Tyler Lucy scored the game's only goal in the 34th minute as the Reign managed just 2 shots on goal in that one. The result dropped the Reign to a tie for second in the NWSL standings, 1 point behind the Washington Spirit. They'll be back home Sunday to face the team they're tied with and the other team that beat them on the road this season, Gotham FC, which has continued that strong start, albeit with a modest +1 goal differential compared to +6 for the Reign. After allowing a league-high 2.1 goals per match last season, Gotham FC allowing under 1 so far this year. On Tuesday, the deal involving the Reign's parent team, Olympique Lyonnais, was announced. Washington Spirit owner Michel Kang will become the majority owner of an organization overseeing both the Spirit and OL Féminine. L'Équipe in France reported that OL is seeking 50 million euros, or about 54 million USD, in the sale of the Reign. It would be in line with the expansion fee that we've seen for the recent team that's going to start play in the Bay Area. All right, the Seattle Storm will open the post-Sue Bird, Brianna Stewart era in the 2023 season on Saturday, hosting the Las Vegas Aces on ABC at 12 noon. Starting lineup now looks pretty well set with Yvonne Turner starting both preseason matchups at point guard, including a scrimmage they played last Sunday at LA against the Sparks. Storm will have to set their final roster by Thursday afternoon. They had hoped to get Gabby Williams back if her Asvel team was upset in the semifinals of the French playoffs, but despite Williams being sidelined in concussion protocol, they erased a 13-point deficit after the first road leg to win their 2-game aggregate semifinal series over the weekend against Bourges. The finals won't conclude until after the Storm open the season, likely making Williams ineligible to play this season under the WNBA's new prioritization rule. Although if she doesn't play in the games due to the concussion, Storm has made the case to WNBA front office that because she isn't able to travel right now due to the concussion, that she shouldn't necessarily be considered subject to the prioritization rule. But Coach Noel Quinn did say after practice Tuesday that they're kind of anticipating they'll move forward without Gabby Williams this year. That leaves the Storm needing to cut at least one.
You don't want to hear my
player.
thoughts about it. You're just moving on.
Well, I was unclear whether you were jumping in.
I was over here being angry the entire time about the prioritization rule. Gabby Williams is trying to make money, right?
Yes.
By playing in France. That's it. If the WNBA wants Gabby Williams to not play in France, pay her more fucking money. Period. The idea that we're like cheering for a French team to lose because she could play if they lost, but not if they win. This is an absurd way to approach the fucking sport.
I agree.
Let her play or pay her more. That is it. Those are the two options. Being like, no, you can't. Because ultimately, it's impacting players who are not stars more than anything else.
Well,
right?
she's literally the only player who's going to be affected by it this year.
That's it? Just Gabby Williams?
Yeah.
There are some players. She is the only player who's going to be affected by it on the court. There are other people who are affected by it financially, though. There are players who are giving up money by not playing in different places.
Not really, because the French League was the only league that didn't move their schedule. All the other ones just moved their finish ahead of the... Now, next year is going to be a much trickier situation because next year the rule isn't you have to be back before the start of the regular season. Next year you have to be back by the start of training camp or May 1st, whichever is later. And it'll probably be that May 1st date because next year they have to deal with the Olympics. They have that in the middle of their season. And whether other leagues will back down at that point is unclear. But this year it was only the French League.
I get it. Like, I understand. But for this scenario, if Gabby Williams is the only player affected,
it's not a good rule.
just let her play. Just waive it, right? Like, why do you need to be hard line about this? If they waive it for Gabby Williams, where do players play most? Spain, places like that? Turkey?
Turkey is, the highest paying place by far now.
If those two places are like, no, then the WNBA still, they're being bullies here, ultimately, to the players and to the leagues. By saying you need to prioritize something, but not giving you anything. This is straight up taxation without representation.
I mean, they did give the players more money in exchange for this. The players agreed to the prioritization
How much
rule
more?
in the new CBA negotiations.
Still, the leverage is ultimately with the leagues in any of these CBA negotiations. Like,
Well,
anything-
certainly in women's sports, because of the fact that, like, look, if the NBA decided they weren't going to let anyone play, like, someone else would start a new men's basketball league. The alternative cost in women's basketball is much higher.
there's not a leverage point that they have.
But I think there is a growing leverage point with these, like we just talked about, that $50 million potential valuation for the Reign.
I mean, there better be.
When OL bought the
Reign
team,
now worth $50 million, but
well, I mean, if an expansion team in the Bay Area is, why aren't they?
I'm skeptical about NWSL vis-a-vis WNBA. I think the WNBA is a much more like the excitement.
But the Storm's valuation was way more than $50.
Okay, good. Because the WNBA, I think, is one of the biggest growing sports in the United States, right?
So, but once the valuations get that high, that actually is leverage for the players. We suddenly, just folding the league isn't a possibility. And that's kind of been the WNBA's card this entire time.
Yeah, fuck it, we'll go home. You can't even play basketball. Folding the league is their card.
Yeah.
I would like to call
I mean,
them
you
on that.
look at the history of women's professional soccer. There's been a series of leagues, and several of them have folded. So
I do think things are changing, but I think ultimately this rule probably will be nothing. It is unnecessarily punitive to Gabby Williams, though. And
I agree.
maybe the Storm are fine with that, because what we witnessed earlier today in the draft lottery is what the Storm care about.
I mean, they want to sign Gabby Williams, but the upside is they retain her rights.
Having Gabby Williams next year
is a restricted free agent.
I don't like, personally, for Gabby Williams as a human being, for the Storm having Gabby Williams next year after having maybe a down season might be the right way to approach things.
So the other implication of this, we'll get back to whether it's better for the Storm in a second, is that if Williams had signed the Storm, been able to re-sign, the Storm probably would have had to keep 11 on their opening day roster. Now they will have, in all likelihood, enough money to keep 12 players. They have 13 currently in camp after waiving a pair of draft picks last week, Jade Lovell and Maddie Williams, followed by forward Jasmine Walker on Tuesday. That leaves point guard Ivana Dojkic, wings Kyla Charles and Aurelia Garantes, likely battling for two spots, unless the Storm adds somebody from another team's cutdowns, which is possible. To your point about better for the Storm, ESPN preseason power rankings had the Storm 11th from my colleague, Emily Vopel, out of 12 teams. My statistical projections for the season have them in the same spot.
11th. Who's the worst team?
Indiana still, even with the addition of Aaliyah Boston.
You say that like we all know. Who the worst team in the WNBA is.
Oh, we all do.
Do you participate in the ESPN power rankings?
Not at the team level. Those are just Vopel. So on Saturday they'll face the Aces, and there's just as they did in their last game of 2022 in the WNBA
They
semifinals.
did that shit with Sue Bird and Breonna Stewart. It ain't happening.
The Aces, well, just listen to this. The Aces returned all 6 players who played at least 4 minutes in last year's game.
4 minutes?
Out in Seattle. Plus, they've added Candace Parker and our old friend Alicia Clark via free agency. You know, there were some reports that the reason that they were able to do that is because of the fact that there were some under-the-table payments offered to players. The WNBA was not able to corroborate that in terms of this year's free agency, in terms of their investigation, the results of which were announced Tuesday. But they did strip the Aces a first-round pick for their agreement with Dearica Hamby, and they also suspended Becky Hammond 2 games, including this opening game, after the league's investigation found that Hammond violated the respect in the workplace policies with her comments to Hamby during her pregnancy before the Aces traded her to the LA Sparks to make room for these signings.
And pretty important comments. The draft pick is for Vegas. It's like whatever, right? I mean, you basically told me like a first round draft pick means absolutely nothing. This isn't like the NFL, right? A first-round draft pick at the end of the first round is,
Very limited value.
yeah,
50-50 whether they make the team at best.
it's like we're talking like a deep second-round pick in the NBA.
Yes. So,
Cool. Honestly, whatever you can do to keep the league moving. You know what I mean? Like, the Aces are good for the WNBA. And the Liberty are good for the WNBA.
we'll see how it works out. We'll also see how long this super team era lasts because, as I mentioned, the prioritization could be a factor in 24. So,
It's unfortunate that it's at the expense of the Storm, but those two teams playing each other, when you imagine a WNBA finals, if it comes to it, between the Liberty and the Aces, it'd be pretty incredible.
I think that's going to draw rate pretty well.
I'm like all of a sudden rallied around Vegas.
I mean, it's tough because obviously
It's Kelsey Plum's team.
Brianna Stewart still has a special place in one's heart.
It's different. Brianna Stewart didn't choose to play in Seattle. Brianna Stewart was drafted by Seattle. Kelsey Plum chose to play in Seattle.
And they also have Alicia Clark, who is one of my all-time favorites.
Right? Kelsey Plum should take precedence. Look, I know you don't care about this sort of thing. Seattle, don't like the city. But like you don't respect basketball players from there. But the city, if you're viewing it from a Seattle perspective, Kelsey Plum should be basically at the top of that list.
Yeah,
So, and she's awesome.
without question. Did you know that Tom Brady is part of the Aces ownership group, though?
I think I might have seen that.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our UW rundown, starting with the baseball, because they are permanently in the rundown for the rest of this season.
Whoa! Maybe we keep the pressure on them a little bit.
No, they don't need the pressure anymore because I already took it off last week, and they still came up with a huge sweep at number 24,
This is
Oregon.
the most excited I've seen you.
They win into Eugene, home of track and field and baseball, and powered by dominant hitting. They outscored the Ducks 43-18 over the 3 games, scoring at least 11 runs in
I
each
love
game.
that you're the most animated in like 6 months. We drafted Jackson Smith and Jigba, and you're the most animated at UW sweeping Oregon at baseball.
It's the 2 IPAs. It's the first UW sweep of Oregon since the Ducks resumed playing baseball in 2009. You find that very funny?
That's really funny. Oh.
And their most runs in any 3-game series since 2004.
We were playing baseball at the time.
We were, yeah.
The
Only
Ducks were
Oregon
number
was-
20, the head of UW, and they just resumed playing baseball in 2000.
Huskies hit 7 home runs and 11 doubles in the 3-game series. At 16-10, the Huskies are now second in the Pac-12, percentage points ahead of 18-12 Oregon State, and a half game better than 16-11 USC.
This team is an NCAA tournament team.
They are currently in the projection from collegesportsmadness.com.
There we go. What seed are they?
You
In
only
or
have the
out?
16 seeds,
Look.
like softball.
I think I know a thing or two about college baseball. And
You know anything? Maybe 2.
being ahead of Tim Lincecum, Kevin Stalker, being ahead
Oh, wow.
of
The
Oregon
disrespect
State.
to Joe Wayne has.
Look, no, never, ever. Being ahead of Oregon State, being number 2 in the Pac-12 is a huge deal. This is a College World Series, college tournament, whatever it is,
NCAA tournament. Let's call it
NCAA
that.
tournament team that UW is fielding right now. And what head coach, dude from LSU, has done,
Jason something? Pretty sure it's
has done at this program is remarkable to
agree.
turn this team around.
yeah. In 1 year, I mean, this team was not that good last year, so it's very exciting. All right, Phil will look you up the name of this.
The name of their head coach.
Jason Kelly.
There we go.
Had it all the way.
Look, I knew LSU. You knew Jason. He was the pitching coach at UW beforehand.
When
We know all about Jason Kelly.
when they went to the College World Series.
Those players, they must be still playing. They did a shortstop that I liked.
I don't know that any of the starters are still involved. UW wraps up
But
the
there's-
conference.
I think they're probably
'cause this
still
was
playing.
pre-pandemic, wasn't it? It was like 2019, wasn't
You
it?
think they're not lingering in the minors? I know Joe Wayne
still
has.
in the minors.
Joe Wayne has as a golf instructor now
Yeah,
in Texas.
Possible some of them are in the minors. UW wraps up the conference schedule this weekend by hosting Cal, which comes in tied for the silver in the Pac-12 at 10-17. So
Comes in tied for the seller in the Pac-12. That's what he said. Okay.
yeah. So
It's
a
a
real
sweep.
chance for the Huskies to, if they sweep, they guarantee second place in the Pac-12.
I mean, I can't go to any of these games, but
Because you're going to be at the Thunderbirds game.
I've got an important plan to skip my child's birthday party and to go to a T-Birds game.
Show Center isn't going to fill itself.
Look, if that sells out, then I'll be at the Utah baseball game. One way or another. Whatever sporting event, fringe sporting event in Seattle I can be at. I'm going to be at Gabby Williams' French game with Wendy.
There you go. There you go.
Me and Wendy are going to be there in
You know,
France.
Titty Parker is a part owner of that team.
There we go.
Just like he is still OL Red.
Tony
Still-
Parker?
He still owns his small percentage of the team.
I think 2 IPAs might be too much for this.
We have learned that, yes. It was a disappointing performance for UW softball in the inaugural Pac-12 tournament for the Huskies. They needed to sweat out a 1-0 win over number 7 seed Oregon State in Thursday's quarterfinals, with Jaden Alchin supplying the only score with a second inning home run. Brie Malin with the distance for a 3-hit shutout in that one, her 7th of the season. But in the semifinals Friday versus Utah, the Huskies went behind 3-0 in the third inning and 4-0 before getting on the board with a pair of runs in the bottom of the fifth. Utah extended the lead to 8-2 entering the bottom of the seventh. When UW offered a late scare with Riley Holtorf homering to make it 8-3, Huskies added a run on a bases-loaded sac fly and then reloaded the bases to bring the tying run to the plate down to their final out. But Alchin grounded out to end the game. Utah went on to upset UCLA in the final. But good news, despite the loss, the Huskies still earned the number 7 seed in the NCAA tournament,
Okay.
allowing them to host the regionals this weekend in the Super Regionals if they advance.
Where you at, Oregon?
Minnesota, McNeese
1 through
State.
6? Probably not.
No, they are not. Minnesota, McNeese State, and Northern Colorado will be the other 3 teams in this
McNeese
weekend's
State is weirdly scary.
double elimination regionals. You recall that McNeese State, the Southland champs, actually beat UW 3-2
Yeah, I don't-
in
So,
Louisiana. earlier this
Minnesota
season.
and Northern Colorado, fine. McNeese State scares me.
We got an email from the Louisiana listener, Warren Arsenault, who said he is willing to provide on-site coverage from the softball regional featuring my hometown McNeese
Oh,
Cowgirls in exchange for plane ticket, Dick's gift card, and an autographed Ichiro bat, which may be used to beat some sense into Tristan.
You would hit me like one time very softly. Look, it would get past all the defenders, but no extra bases.
The Huskies will open Friday with Big Sky champion Northern Colorado. The Bears making their first appearance ever in the NCAA tournament. Minnesota faces McNeese State in the other bracket, having finished third in the Big Ten at 17-6. The Gophers went 2-0 against Pac-12 foes, beating both Oregon and
Easy.
Arizona
Easy
State
thing
in
to do.
preseason tournaments.
It's Oregon at track or softball. Just an easy thing to beat. Easy.
However, they lost 9-6 to Seattle U, who was beaten by the Huskies, and their only matchup of the season.
I really. Do you feel the same way? McNeese State is a scary team.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Everybody's scary, but McNeese State is the most scary.
I mean, the Huskies would be at home in this matchup, and that was on the Monday after a long weekend of a tournament play. But, yeah. All right, let's wrap up with the Seahawks. We learned last week how would the Seahawks create the necessary cap room to sign all their draft picks. On Thursday, Field Yates, my ESPN colleague, reported the Seahawks converted $8.535 million of Tyler Lockett's 2023 salary into a signing bonus, clearing $5.69 million of cap space this season. That does increase Lockett's cap hit in 2024 and 2025, the remaining seasons of his contract, making it much more difficult for the Seahawks to move on from Lockett next year, which they won't need to.
Yeah, why would you want to move on from Tyler Lockett?
I'm just saying. In addition to the draft picks, the Seahawks also used some of the space to sign defensive end Mario Edwards Jr., an 8-year vet who spent last season with the Tennessee Titans. The Seahawks will be his 6th team, not counting a practice squad stint with the Jaguars last year before signing in Tennessee.
Wow, he was in the practice squad?
It was kind of shocking because he had signed a pretty good size extension with Chicago before this, but the Bears waived him in training camp. Edwards started 7 games last season, his most since 2017, playing 51% of the snaps after joining the
I'm
Titans.
excited about Edwards in that 3-tech position. Like,
Yeah.
again, kind of just needed depth there, but I think this is it. Mario Edwards will probably not be seen on the field making an impact because this position doesn't that much, but he will have an impact on the game.
Yes. I mean, it's weird to go through and like look at statistics. I think that generally the PFF tracking rated him pretty well as a pass rusher last season.
I was excited about the signing. And coming out of the draft when people were talking about like the Seahawks should have drafted another player here, Mario Edwards is going to have more of an impact in this first season. Maybe not long term, but in this one season with the Seahawks, you could sign a Mario Edwards every single year.
That is true.
So for about the same money, I think this was a good move by the Seahawks, and he will be a factor.
The NFL schedule was released last Thursday. The Seahawks got 3 national TV games. They'll be on Monday Night Football, October 2nd at the New York Giants. Thanksgiving night, they'll play on NBC hosting San Francisco, and then at Dallas on Thursday Night Football the following week.
I mean, Thanksgiving at home for the first time in our lifetimes.
Yeah. I mean, they've played on Thanksgiving a few times because they've played at Dallas.
I remember, they played at Dallas and they played at San Francisco.
I think they played at Dallas multiple times on Thanksgiving.
I only remember
at
one.
least once.
There was like one kind of forgettable game at Dallas that they just lost.
Well, there was Julius Jones was the running back.
I think that was that was the game that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then there was one of the most important games in Seahawks history, beating the Niners on.
They didn't beat the Niners. They ended the Niners.
The Niners will never be good again.
Well, not never good again, but they weren't. Jim Harbaugh was not walking through that door. Let's put it that way.
Ending the Niners on Thanksgiving night. That was like one of the best football nights, right?
Oh, without question.
It was incredible. Seeing Richard Sherman eating the turkey leg. Come on. Having that at home against the Niners again.
It's going to make for an interesting Thanksgiving day.
The stakes are now very high. It's fucking middle of the summer here in Seattle. And
not the middle.
It was 90 degrees. Middle of summer here in Seattle. I'm already reshaping my Thanksgiving Day plans because of this. And I'll tell you what, I could not be more excited. Thanksgiving Day football, what more could you ask for? Because sometimes you're going to a football game, it's Sunday, you're like, I don't really want to go for it today. I've got work tomorrow or whatever. This is the first day of a 4-day weekend. Right here, Thursday football. It's not Thursday night football going into a Friday of a work week. This is one of the best 4-day weekends of the year.
Wow, I did not really think about this concept, but you've laid it out quite nicely here.
You think me and Chris Smith are not going to be drinking beers in this game? Like, let's fucking go.
I would never accuse you.
Seahawks, Niners, we're going to be so full of potatoes and gravy, right? Whatever Nate Duncan ranked for us. Like, we are going to be getting after it on a Thursday football game. I'm just throwing this out there. This might be one of the drunkest Seahawks games in history.
I think that is very possible. We'll have decided what Seattle's best IPA is by that point, so you can drink it.
I will not. I'll be drinking something much lighter there.
Also, think about your weekend. You've got that Thursday, Saturday, the Apple Cup.
That's Saturday.
Yeah.
And also, we give a day to recover.
Yeah.
Is there Black Friday football this year, or is that starting the following year?
In the NFL?
You haven't seen this? That all these teams are debating they want the Black Friday game?
I have not seen this information.
The Jets desperately want the Black Friday game.
Well, they haven't butt fumbled on Black Friday yet. So that makes sense.
That's true. Just creepy Sauce Gardner figures on the cover of SI. Yeah, some people still see or read SI. And I guess they're talking about the Jets in May. I don't know why.
Lovely feature about the Kraken is the SI cover story went a day last week from Greg Bishop. The Seahawks will open the season by hosting the LA Rams, which leads me to ask, who wants a live Peltoncast Friday, September 8th?
You know,
before
any
that
person
game?
who's made it to this point wants a live Peltoncast.
Exactly.
It's about the other people.
Well, I just
It's
need
about
them to speak up.
most people who've not made it to this point.
We've not even started this podcast. It's an early bye for the Seahawks in Week 5, which might not be such a bad thing with Jordan Brooks and Jamal Adams coming off of injuries. Hopefully Jamal Adams will be back
We're
by
just
this
we're
point.
just gonna circle the wagons around an off-ball linebacker and just be like, oh, it's a good early buy. Their off-ball linebacker might be back. We only have the best linebacker in Seahawks history on the team this year.
Well, they can play. They can both play. I don't know if you're aware of this. Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner both played together in
I'm not saying
2021.
that they can't play separately, but like being like, well, this is a good thing. They'll get their safety and their off-ball linebacker back. This isn't like Geno Smith returns after the bye. This isn't like Jackson Smith and Jigba in order of importance for the roster. Those two players, he's going for like 2,000 yards this year. He's just always open.
Who's third between DK and Tyler? Devin Witherspoon?
Trick one.
That's fair. That's fair.
It's not a good thing having this bye. It'll be fun as fans to have it and get it out of the way, but like it is a slog that the Seahawks are going to have to go through post bye.
Wow.
It's basically like they're playing a full NFL season after this bye. You know, when you add the extra week with how early it is, they are grinding.
They'll have 13 games after the bye.
And they don't even get, it goes Thanksgiving into Thursday Night Football.
So they after that second Thursday night game will get the mini bye, quote unquote, before playing on Sunday the following week.
Still.
But they will need it. They are playing 3 games within 17. No, I forget what the number of days. Yeah, 17 days. I think that's right.
With the Sunday and a Thursday and a Thursday.
Correct. Thanksgiving, that first Seahawks Niners meeting. The other 2 weeks later, in between is the Cowboys, and then after that they host Philadelphia. So that is 4 consecutive games against the expected top 3 teams in the NFC.
I will say this is the number one year that for the Seahawks to need depth across the board in the roster. And I do think this is not like me saying the Mariners roster is perfect. I think that the Seahawks roster is quite deep.
I feel like it's quite deep in certain positions. I mean, we'll see about the defensive line. That would be the biggest question mark.
Line. It is. There's a lot of dudes.
There's always a lot of dudes. Like there's still going to be the same number of players on the roster every year.
If we're qualifying the amount of dudes on the roster, it's almost always the same.
They've got 90. That's the limit.
I guess I agree that it's quite deep at some positions, but I think it's deep
like
at the right positions.
Secondary, I think, extremely deep.
And that is a position the Seahawks have been hurt quite a bit.
Wide receiver, pretty deep. I mean, compared to last season, certainly.
Sure.
Running back, they keep drafting them.
Extraordinarily
So many
deep.
highly drafted running backs. So
No, I think this roster has quite a bit of depth. Like, they're going to have some good competitions going into training camp, into the preseason and the regular season. Like,
that's my hope.
I think this is going to be a roster that will withstand this regular season.
I also think linebacker will be pretty deep from the standpoint of, again, they've had to build a group there that can withstand not having Jordan Brooks.
Is Tanner Muse still on the roster?
I believe he is still on the roster.
That's what we're talking about, right? Tanner Muse is the depth we're talking about.
Well, he was not. I was referring to if you have a situation where Wagner and Jordan Brooks are starting and Devin Bush is your third linebacker.
Oh, yeah, Devin Bush. Let's
Yeah.
freaking go.
So
No, I don't know. Judging a schedule, we knew who we were going to play. Just went. It'll be fun. It'll be fun playing on Thanksgiving.
I always like to use the Larry Bird quote about 41 home, 41 road. Looks good to me. Doesn't work in the NFL anymore.
8 home, 9 road. Looks good to me. It's kind of extraordinarily different than Larry Bird, what he was talking about.
I don't know if it's extraordinarily different.
It
Everyone
is.
in the NFC has 8 home and 9 road, except for the
streak
international games.
The teams you play, it's not like
That's
Larry
true.
Bird.
Yes,
where
the
you
NFL
play,
schedule is it is designed to create parity,
yes,
which the NBA
It's
schedule is not.
definitely not like what Larry Bird was talking about. So it was an irrelevant quote, but thank you for bringing it up. Anyway.
Goodbye the last week with 2 IPAs.
Midsummer. Schedule's released. Jackson Smith and Jigba's on the roster. What more could we ask for?
On that note,
Thanks for listening.
thanks.